My name is Emily Green-cain. I am 63 years old. I come from the United States, from Tennessee. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, which I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's the home of country music, so it's a very musical city. I grew up in the mountains of Tennessee near my mother's family, and they had a farm in East Tennessee, and every week we would go visit our grandfather's family and hear stories about them growing up. So my growing up was in a very small town, and my mother was a librarian. She worked in a church in the library. As I went through my career, I ended up working in a library as well, so books are like a real passion. My father traveled. He was a traveling shoe salesman, so he traveled from town to town in the southeast of the U.S. and sold shoes to different stores. When I was a child, music was really important to my mother, so we always had classical music playing in the house, and I would dance around the living room, as I wanted to be a ballerina. That was my life dream, but I was too short, so it couldn't happen. But I did go into performing arts, and I started that very young. I started that when I was a child, taking dance lessons when I was 4, and it became later lessons in theater and joining choirs and doing a lot of performing. So performing has always been something that I've done a lot of. I had a general education through secondary school, through high school. And then when I went to college, university, I studied performing arts. So I studied to be an actress, and then I got a degree in directing for the theater. So my background was in performing, and for many years I worked with a very small touring theater company. I was an actor with that company, and we wrote all original plays that we performed over the eastern United States, up and down the coast. It was a very small company. We would travel in a little van, and go from town to town and play at mostly festivals and colleges. There's a really, I don't know, it's kind of a bad story, but it's kind of a funny story. We would go into these small communities in the Tennessee and Virginia mountains, and they had never seen performers before. So we were like the first people they had ever seen live to do something. And we had one show where we were clowns, and we wore clown makeup and did a circus act, And so we were getting ready and putting our makeup on, and we walked out, and one of the men from the town was really giving us the stink eye, is what we would say. He's looking at us like, who are these people? And his son went, what is that? He said, it's a clown, son. Get him. He told his son to come get us. And we were like, oh, what do we do now? But that was the kind of situation that we were in a lot, where we were the only people they'd ever seen perform. And we were doing plays for this community of people. Often it was really joyful, and sometimes it was a little scary. After that small company, I had my first child. And so that kind of took the performing arts out of the picture, because you couldn't perform at night. And so I went more into teaching at that point. I became an educator and started teaching at a children's theater in Nashville. I was doing theater classes for young children and teenagers. And then I worked for a while in a church as a religious educator. So I continued doing education, but just in a different way. And then later I worked at the public library. We had a program called Bringing Books to Life, and it was a truck with puppet shows on it. And they would go to child care centers and elementary schools, or what you would call primary schools, I guess. So they went to perform for young children, and my job was to help the teachers with materials that would help them in their classroom, to be able to talk about the puppet shows. So I wrote a lot of educational materials. Well, I have a very good friend her mother was Portuguese and was from Porto. And so she had worked in Braga for, I don't know, a year, maybe, and loved it and met a lot of people here and kept talking about Braga, this town. Braga is beautiful. It's so pretty. It's so lovely. I have so many friends there, you know. And then my husband and I were traveling in Europe and realized that the food system in Europe was better for his health. So at that point we said, well, let's move to Europe somewhere. And then we talked to Margaret and she said, go look at Braga, you know. And so we did. We came over here and she introduced us to some people. So we knew a few people already. And we love Braga. We think it's wonderful. The people are lovely. They're just very friendly and very welcoming. And it has a theater. You look at the cultural magazine and it's got enough for, you know, there's more than anybody could possibly do. So we feel like it gives us a lot of opportunity to do many things. When we came here, I was trying to figure out what can I do, and of course theater relies so much on language. Since I couldn't speak Portuguese yet, I kept thinking, well, what can I do? And I saw a painting class at one of the galleries. And so I went to take the class, and then I took another class in Porto. And I found that I really enjoyed painting a lot. So that has been my primary activity here, really, is doing my painting. It's a quilt. This is a form of bedspread, I suppose you'd say. What is the word for that? And it's made from little pieces of cloth. And in my grandfather's time, the women would make these at the house. All the neighbors would come over and they would set up a big wooden frame, and all the women would sit and sew and gossip. You know, that was their thing. And so all of us grandchildren have some of these quilts. And these pieces are made from old flour sacks. In the United States, the flour sacks used to come with these printed fabrics because so many people couldn't get to a fabric store. So the flour sacks were what they cut up and used to make clothing or quilts. So this is a quilt. It's called a wedding ring quilt. So it's got rings all over it. And it was probably made for someone's, we call it a hope chest in the United States, where they prepare things for their life as a bride. So I'm very proud to have this as a memory of my grandfather's family. If I had to describe Braga in one word, it would be festive.